How can roast chicken with spring vegetables improve your aphasia? Let's find out now. Life after stroke, aphasia, Parkinson's, or communication changes can feel unfamiliar for you and the people who care about you. But there is hope. Progress starts with small wins, and those wins add up. I created the Listen for Life Aphasia podcast to help you and your loved ones take simple, actionable steps each week. Whether you're rebuilding communication or supporting someone who is, you're not alone. I'm Genevieve, founder of Life Speech Pathology. For over 30 years, I've helped individuals and families rediscover confidence, connection, and joy, one win at a time. Let's take the next step together. Welcome back to the Listen for Life Aphasia podcast. I'm Genevieve, and today's episode is the first in our new series. I'm calling it What's Possible for Stroke Survivors. This series is all about showing you the powerful recovery opportunities you can create at home with simple tools and purposeful actions. Today, we're diving into how something as simple as a printed recipe, yes, you heard me right, a recipe can help improve your speech, language, and thinking skills. Let me be clear, this isn't a how to episode, it's a what's possible episode. We'll touch on how neuroplasticity works, share an overview of ways to use a recipe in therapy, and how a couple of practical examples of what you can do at home today. By the end of this episode, you'll know just how powerful everyday therapy can be and how you can take your recovery to the next level. So, how does that sound? This episode of the Listen for Life Aphasia podcast is brought to you by Life Aphasia Academy. The Life Aphasia Academy provides practical tools, resources, and expert guidance to empower stroke survivors, their spouses, and care partners to rebuild communication and connection. Whether you're navigating the early days of recovery or looking for strategies to thrive long term, the Life Aphasia Academy is here to support your journey. Visit lifeaphasiaacademy.co to learn more. So let's dive into the episode. What is neuroplasticity and why does it matter? Neuroplasticity. Have you heard of this term? You may have heard of it, but are not really sure what it means. So let's get into it. Neuroplasticity is your brain's ability to adapt, change, and rewire itself after an injury like a stroke. This process is what allows you to recover lost skills, rebuild connections, and improve communication over time. When you have a stroke, you lose parts of your brain. If you've had a bleed, if you had loss of oxygen due to a blood clot to part of your brain, you have to find ways to detour around that damaged area. And the good news is our brains are amazing. There are other systems in the brain that can be trained to take over. But I won't kid you, this is not a quick process, but it is effective. And what it takes is time and consistency and challenge. Challenge is one of those things like learning something new, um, really trying to figure something out. If you're not working and making an effort, if you're not feeling like your brain is putting in that effort, then you're not quite at the level you need to be at. So here's the key: the brain won't rewire itself unless you work it. Think of it like exercising a muscle. You have to use it regularly and purposefully and put your muscles under a load to see progress. This is where everyday therapy comes in. You don't need expensive tools or complex programs to tap into neuroplasticity. You can use simple everyday items like a printed recipe to work on your speech, language, memory, and thinking skills in targeted ways. So I originally came up with a protocol and I said there are 10 general uses of a recipe in therapy. So I didn't want to bore you with all 10, but I'm going to give you top 5 ways. And again, this is not a how to episode, this is a what's possible episode. I'm here to inspire you, to get you thinking. If you like to cook, if you like recipes, or if you even just like to eat, this is a therapeutic task you can do at home in neuroplastic ways. So let's go into the first way you can use a recipe to help build your brain recovery. You can use reading and fluency and vocabulary. So all of that is one of our 5. So we're going to practice fluency. What is fluency? Fluency is that natural rhythm and flow of your speech. You can do things like gradual reading. To work on your vocabulary, you can go through the recipe and underline words that you're not familiar with. Then you go to your smartphone or to the internet in some way and look up those words. Take the time, write down the definition. Think about the words. What do they mean and how do they apply in the context of a recipe? So, even something as simple as taking the vocabulary out of a recipe and learning new words like heirloom or sprig, right? I was inspired by a recipe by Ina Garten. And this is her roast chicken with spring vegetables recipe. So, of course, she's using words like heirloom tomatoes or sprig of rosemary. So let's move on to the second way you can use a recipe to work on neuroplasticity. You can improve your understanding by looking at the order of the recipe. What do I do first? So you can read over the recipe steps. If they're too complex, then write them out, make them more simple, and then practice quizzing yourself. Which thing do I do first? Should I preheat the oven first or should I get the carrots going first? Do I need to prep the sprigs of rosemary first or should I do something else? Practice comprehension and sequencing of steps. Let's talk about numbers, also known as numeracy skills. Doesn't that sound fancy? So you can practice with the ingredients part of the recipe. They have fractions and quantities in there. You want 1 pound of carrots. You want 2 sprigs of rosemary. You want 1/4 cup of butter melted. You want 1 teaspoon or less of salt. Whatever it is, look at those number fractions, write them down. If you're not sure what a fraction means, like you see those numbers, work with somebody else. Get out the measuring cups, get out your spoons, and play around with measuring some flour or some oatmeal or whatever it is you have in the house. Making that connection between the numbers you see on the page and numbers, the functional, practical application of those numbers, like measuring ingredients, can really help build your number skills. Let's talk about develop writing and grammar. I would start by writing ingredients. Let's keep this simple. If it's easy to write ingredients, then you can go to writing the steps. But first thing, let's say it says you want a 6 pound chicken, right? This is a whole bone chicken. So you look at the recipe, it says 6 pound, it'll say LB, 6-LB chicken. Then go to your paper and write that down. Hold on to those words in your head, visualize them, practice saying them out loud as you go to write them down. Of course, you can always go back and copy what is already there. But if you can read it, hold on to it, and write it down, that is working neuroplasticity. Another thing you can do is go through the instructions and circle the verbs: mix, stir, heat, scrape, whatever those action words are. That's why recipes are so great for working on verbs. They it really sets the stage and helps you understand actions and what a verb means. And then recipes are also written out very most of the time, they're pretty simple and straightforward because they want you to have success following the recipe and they want you to come back for more. If they make the recipe too complicated in how they write it out, any person's going to get frustrated and never go back to that website or that cookbook again. A last way you can think about using a recipe is to do it with someone else. What does that even mean? Maybe this is the social part where you are creating the recipe together. You're working in tandem. One of you pulls the ingredients out of the cupboard, like, honey, let's make this recipe. Okay, here's what we need. And so maybe the wife or the spouse is talking to you, the person with aphasia, that says, grab the AP flour, get the salt, the pepper, the garlic, the carrots, so one person is saying the ingredient, the other person is retrieving it. Or switch roles. There's no right or wrong way to do this. What I'm doing is giving you some parameters. And that is the beauty and the flexibility of using something functional like a recipe for therapy. Get creative. This is about what's possible because like I said earlier, you don't need something fancy. You can use a recipe to do therapy on yourself at home. Practice reading out loud, practice spelling, look at a word in the recipe, try and visualize each of the letters in your mind, and then write it down. If writing is hard, type it. Type it into the notes app of your phone. Type the ingredients or what you need to buy at the grocery store to make the recipe into the notes or the reminders app of your phone. So let me give you two specific examples of using a recipe. Those 5 ways are a little more general, so here's some specifics and we'll break it down. The first one is we're going to work on what's called gradual reading. Let me give you an example of gradual reading. You're going to start with the first word, and then you go back to the first word and add the second word. Then the first word, second word, third word. Do you see the pattern? We are always starting at the beginning and adding an extra word. What we want to think about is saying it in a nice rhythmic and flowing way. So let me read you the title, Gradual Reading Style. Roast, roast chicken with, roast chicken with spring, roast chicken with spring vegetables. So you keep practicing that title until you get it to flow smoothly, until you get your eyes and your brain and your mouth, everybody in alignment to be able to say that title. You don't have to spend 10 minutes on it. Spend a minute or two. This method helps build fluency and confidence one step at a time. So I gave you this example before, but I want to be very specific this time. We are going to work on writing from memory because what we're trying to do is work on working memory. Working memory is that temporary storage of information. It's limited in its capacity and it doesn't stay around for very long. But what we need is working memory where you have to hold on to something for like 20, 30 seconds and get it out, and then you can move on to the next thing. So let's use ingredients for this. So the ingredients is 1/4 cup olive oil. So you want to read that. You can read it silently. then read it out loud, and then pause. Keep your eyes open and then try to visualize those exact words just as you read them off the page. Visualize them in your mind. 1/4 cup olive oil. Rehearse it again. Rehearse it again if you need to, and then go to the paper and write it down, or in your smartphone, type it. 1/4 cup olive oil. If you can't remember the whole thing, no problem. Start by writing just the quantity first. 1/4 cup. So you want to get it from silent reading to reading out loud, visualizing in your head, and then writing it down. Get that first quantity down and then go back to the recipe and look at the ingredients. Over time, working on this, you're going to be able to hold that whole quantity and ingredient in your mind and write it all down in one step. That's working memory. Working memory is that holding part. It's you the only way to improve it is to practice it. And this is an easy way to practice it. So I hope these examples show you how even simple tasks can be tailored to meet your specific needs or goals. If you need to work on speech, use a recipe. If you need to work on reading, writing, processing of numbers, use a recipe. Hate recipes, never use them, never cook. Well, that's okay. In upcoming What's Possible episodes, we'll dig into a bunch more examples of what you can use. Say you're a fisherman and you are shopping for your next fishing pole or your next rod and reel or your next whatever it is you need for fishing. We can use that in a very functional way that builds neuroplasticity. So, what do you think? Did you ever think you could use something as humble as a recipe to improve your speech and language and rebuild pathways in your brain? This is only the beginning of our series. First step, first action step for today. Whether you use recipes regularly or not, I encourage you, grab a recipe, get it in front of you, re-listen to this episode and pick one of the examples. Maybe it's gradual reading or it's writing from working memory. When you're practicing, I really want you to pay attention to how the task feels. What works? What doesn't work? It's important to think about how you're thinking. It's what we call metacognition or meta language. Recovery is about doing one small, purposeful action at a time, reflecting about it, and then working to improve it. That is the beauty of the brain. It is so complex, and we can use these complexities to our advantage. If this episode resonated with you and you're ready to take the next step, you want to put these therapeutic tasks into practice and build a whole plan, I encourage you to schedule a consultation with Life Speech Pathology. What we do in that consultation is we focus on your communication strengths and we map out an action plan based on who you are and what you want to accomplish. If this sounds interesting to you, the link for the consultation are in the show notes. But if you're not quite ready for a consultation, that is no problem. I encourage you to download our new guide. It's called Reconnecting Beyond Words, a guide to lifelong aphasia recovery. Using this guide, you can work at your own pace. There's many examples in there how you can use everyday items that are already in your home to work on therapy. And if you are a spouse or a care partner listening to this episode, we also have something for you. We've created a free email course just for you. Over 5 days, you'll get practical, easy to follow tips to reduce overwhelm. And when you reduce overwhelm, you make space for yourself. And then that also gives you more bandwidth to help support your loved one who has aphasia. Curious? Follow the link in the show notes and sign up for the Chaos to Clarity email course. It's waiting for you there right now. Recovery happens through action, and even small, purposeful actions keep turning into momentum. So keep listening. Come back next week to the Listen for Life Aphasia podcast, where we will get into more practical therapy ideas for survivors and practical action steps for care partners alike. Until next time, I wish you a fabulous week. Thank you for listening to the Listen for Life Aphasia podcast. For captions, transcripts, show notes, and to meet Archie, our interactive bot, visit listenforlifeaphasiapodcast.com. If this episode brought you a win, big or small, subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who needs it. Recovery is about connection, and every win matters. Take care and keep celebrating your wins, and I'll see you all next time.